Syracuse football is now 6-1 on the season. They're still going bowling. They still have a chance to be 11-1, but a tough loss to Clemson has a lot of thoughts brewing in our minds, yours as well. I'm sure we're going to talk about the game and a lot more on Locked On Syracuse. It starts right now.
Are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine with you on your Monday morning episode. Thanks for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. And this episode of Locked On Syracuse is brought to you by Sling TV. Sling has something for everyone, especially when it comes to college football coverage. With a massive lineup of games across the ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12, and SEC, you can catch the games you want to on Sling, and now everybody can do so. Check out Sling TV now to see the massive lineup of games they have all season long on Sling, the TV you love for a price you'll love. Try it today. Okay, we got a lot to talk about today, or maybe we don't. We're going to find out. That was a tough game. Syracuse lost in Alive Valley, 27-21. Tigers beat the Orange. That was a tough one. There's really no way around it. I don't know if I'd had any better feeling going into a half all season long than I did in this game. Jihad Carter being the absolute man, the scoop and score from him was fantastic. Deuce Chestnut gets hurt, comes back in, first play, bang, forces a fumble. Jihad takes it to the house. Sean with that receiving touchdown early on. I was feeling good about the team. I won't lie, I was, and I think everybody else was too. And if you say you weren't, you're lying. And then the second half came, and Syracuse played its worst half of football since 2020. I mean, that was really, really brutal. And I don't even know where to start. I mean, really, I think the thing on top of my mind since the game ended, and I would like to say this right now, I am not a blame the refs guy at all. I'm not. I don't care, because even if the refs did make it hard for you to win the game, you could have won the game. Okay? And
Should
Syracuse
have won the game.
with or without the refs. Syracuse should have won that game. They just had to score one touchdown. So I'm not a blame the refs guy. I will say the lack of continuity on the roughing the passer calls from Clemson's quarterback to Garrett, I thought that was a little bit ridiculous, and everybody else on Twitter did. Elijah Fuentes Cundiff, it was the kind of play where I think it was like 3rd and 14 or whatever.
It was third and there was a good chunk.
Apes a sack. He tippy toes down the sideline, and you're like, okay, he's going to make it back to the line of scrimmage and go out of bounds. That's fine. We're going to get the ball here. And then it was like he tippy toed for 1 yard, 2 yard, 3 yard, 4 yard. Okay, somebody's got to get this guy, and then pushes out of bounds. Flag comes down. Everybody goes nuts. And then Schrader does pretty much the exact same thing up until the tippy toe part and gets clobbered out of bounds, and they don't call it. Regardless of that, though, Syracuse should have won this game. And they destroyed themselves with penalties. And I'm not blaming the refs here. I'm blaming the offensive line. It seemed like every single momentum shifting move that Syracuse made to move it into their favor was killed by a false start or killed by a holding call. I mean, we were talking about this right before we started the pod. That trick play that saved a drive for Syracuse, where Garrett, came close to the line, took a snap, and just tried to rush it over the line, and did get over, but it was called for a false start on, I believe, Kalon Ellis, or maybe it was Wes Ho. That was brutal, and there are so many more that don't necessarily come to mind right now. Or how about that Aronde catch way down the field on, I believe, another 3rd down, where they got a huge chunk of yards, came back for holding. And then on the defensive side, Clemson, in its final possession of the game, Syracuse also with its final chance to stop Clemson. Tigers have the ball on their own end with on a 3rd and 11 with a little bit over 2 minutes or so. Klubnik looks for a wide receiver deep down the field, throws into double coverage. Isaiah Johnson, without having to, commits pass interference, kills the drive. They kick a field goal, and Dino waits way too long to call timeout, and the game's pretty much over right there. But I felt like the wind was out of their sails at that roughing the passer call. How did you feel, Owen?
Yeah, that roughing the passer call definitely changes the momentum. It was already shifting, but that definitely hurts. And I will say this, when contact was made, Clemson was in bounds. Cade Klubnik was in bounds. And Elijah Fuentes-Cundiff was hit as he hit Klubnik running out of bounds. Should that have been a late hit? Should that have been a late hit call? No. But if you're calling that, you have to call it against Schrader. You have to call that against Schrader.
You have to be consistent. I think you could argue that is my only thing with that. But you have to be consistent.
And I will say this, I don't want to talk about the penalty right there because I do think that Syracuse shot themselves in the foot so many times that, yes, you can circle the penalty, and I think we've given the penalty enough credit right now. You have to circle a lot of other things in this loss because so many other things went wrong for Syracuse in the second half. I cannot stress enough how disappointing this second half of football was on all levels.
It was
coaching, execution, just mental mistake after mental mistake seemed like the theme of the second half for Syracuse. And I will give a shout out to Carter Chase on Twitter. We were asking for post-game thoughts, and I think he hit it perfectly with a metaphor that the refs opened up the coffin and Syracuse jumped right in.
Yeah.
You can't let that play dictate how you played for the remaining 15 minutes of football, and that is what they let happen. They were atrocious in this game. 3 times Syracuse with a false start on 3rd down in this game. Once was a 3rd and 2, once was a 3rd and 1, and the 3rd and 1 was late on a play where Syracuse ended up getting a first down. You killed yourself in this game time and time again in the second half. I do not understand what Syracuse was thinking with their play calling in the second half. My key to the game in our Friday episode was to run your offense and play your game, and they weren't trying to do that. I don't know what they were going for in the second half, but it was absolutely atrocious. They switched from their game plan. They stopped giving the ball to the best player on that football team's offense. They stopped giving him the ball. For what reason, we are not sure. They took the ball out of Sean Tucker's hand for absolutely no reason. In the second half, with, I believe, 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Syracuse had 3 first downs in the second half. One was a 23-yard rush from Sean Tucker. One was a 15-yard rush from Sean Tucker. Those were his only 2 second-half touches at that point. How does that make sense? How does Sean Tucker, the best player on this offense, have 5 carries in this football game, albeit 5 carries for 54 yards? He was efficient. It was working. He wasn't getting stuffed. It was outstanding, Sean Tucker. You were seeing him in his best, consistently doing what you want, getting those chunk yardage plays. But you stop giving him the ball. Post-game, Dino said, oh, it was the read option. It was the read. They were shutting down Sean, so Garrett had to do his thing. Shut up. Give him the football. It's unacceptable that you took the ball out of Sean Tucker's hand. You have people asking if he's hurt, concerned if he's hurt. That doesn't make sense. And the case in point is 3rd down and 6 after the false start. Syracuse desperately needs points, desperately needs a drive. And on 3rd down and 6, who's not on the field? Sean Tucker. Who's in the backfield? Wes Ho. Come on. Figure something out. You blew this game so many times. I am so frustrated. I am so infuriated because a win against Clemson, getting to 7-0, is program changing, and that is not an exaggeration in any sense of my mental approach to this game. If you beat Clemson, you get to 7-0, you are probably 7 or 8 in the country with a sure shot at you are in control of the college football playoff. You do your job, you are headed to the college football playoff. And that is not an exaggeration. That is not a joke. You win this football game, Syracuse football has a different trajectory for the next 5 years. And I am not exaggerating, and I don't think I'm blowing that out of proportion. This loss and the failure to do anything in the second half will be circled in my mind as why Syracuse football stays stagnant moving forward.
I think that an Orange Bowl appearance, if they go 11-1, is not all that much different. Obviously, going to the college football playoff would be crazy, but I think that if you go 11-1, it's not.
Yeah,
You're not
I
going to
will
take too
take an
much of a
Orange
hit.
Bowl, and
But
I
I'm just saying.
understand that. I would take an Orange Bowl,
All
but
right, let's
I
take a
do
quick
think
break.
you're up 21-7. You're up 21-7,
Oh,
and
I
you
know.
have back-to-back turnovers with an 11-point lead to start the second half, and you go 3-and-out and 3-and-out. Execute one time in the second half, and this is a 7-0 football team that wins the ACC.
All right. Take a quick break. Let's talk Nissan. Our partners at Nissan have worked with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College Network titled Thrilling Moments, where we highlight the most exciting play from Syracuse's weekend game or throughout the history of our alma mater. Oh, and give me this week's thrilling moment.
I am going to say James Sutherland in the Big East tournament.
Okay. Can you give me a moment? Like
Was
one
it the Big
moment?
East or is this early ACC time?
I don't know.
I think it was the
We're
Big
moving
East.
on.
Yeah. A
this
moment.
segment-
I'll give you a moment. I will give you a moment. I'm sorry. A moment in time for Syracuse athletics. I was just thinking about
Just
it
pick one.
because my parents were talking about basketball tickets. We'll go John Gillen over Duke.
Lovely. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. All right, Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine, back with you on Locked On Syracuse. Okay, we talked a little bit about it, but I want to talk a little bit more about Tucker because like you said, Owen, they didn't give him the ball nearly as much as he should have had it. Or, I mean, they barely gave him the football. 10 times the man had the football in his hands. And I think everybody would agree that there isn't a player on Syracuse football that even touches the tier that Sean is on. I mean, the guy is just at another level. And on the ground, in his 5 carries, he ran for 54 yards. That's almost 11 yards per carry, 1 yard away from it. And he caught a touchdown. So I don't know why. I guess I do know why, or at least I know why Dino claims it was because they were shutting down the run game. Dino, at least try. Like, you didn't even try. It wasn't like, okay, we'll try Sean and we'll see if he gets stuffed. It wasn't that. It was, all right, we're not even going to give it a chance. We're just going to have Garrett either stumble his way for 5 yards, hopefully, or throw the ball deep down the field and get picked off. Hopefully not. It was just a poor offensive effort. The second half was so just lackluster. It was so bad. They could never get anything going. And the part that I never understood was after it didn't work time and time and time and time and time again, they never thought, okay, all right, let's give it to Sean. Let's just see what happens. And as much as people aren't going to want to do it, this is where even Anai probably deserves a little bit of criticism because they couldn't figure out a play. Even if the Clemson is shutting down the running game or whatever you say, you should have some kind of audible where you can get around it. Like you're telling me you didn't game plan all week for Clemson to shut down your run game? Like what did you work on? Like I don't understand that. Everybody knew that they're a great defense. They have a great front. You didn't think they were going to try and take 34 out of the game? Like, you can't let that happen. For audio listeners, Owen is 1, trying to talk while muted, and 2, he just flipped his hat backwards. So things are about to get real.
You're preparing to play a team with an incredible run defense. And you don't game plan a counter to the run defense. Here's my thing. Let me rattle through, for those of you who maybe have forgotten, Syracuse's second half drives. Punt, 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 interception.
That's so
Jeez,
bad.
change something up. Who cares? You punted every time
I'll
and
tell
then
you what,
forced an
though,
interception.
Max von Marburg looked good.
Oh, well. You went punt, 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 punt. Interception. Who cares if you ran the ball once? You still punted. Right? Like, what difference does this make? Do it. He's the best player on the offense. Give him the football. Have him in the game. It's 3rd and 6, arguably the biggest play of the game for Syracuse. You need to execute on 3rd down, and he's not in the game. No wonder Schrader gets wrecked, because obviously they're not giving the ball to Wes Ho on 3rd and 6. Come on. Use your brain. Use your brain. This is atrocious. You blew this game. You had the ball in your court. You were in pole position to do everything you wanted in the second half. You start so well in the second half. You get a fumble out of Clemson. Clemson doesn't fumble. They don't fumble. And Will Shipley, ball pops out. You jump on it. That's huge. Next drive for Clemson, an atrocious throw by DJ. Execute. Do something. If you scored, and I mean this, and I understand that you lost by 6, but I'm going to stick with my statement here. If you kicked a field goal in the second half, if you scored 3 points in the second half, you won this football game. The fact that they put up 0 is why they lost. And I will stand by that. You needed to do something, and you had infinite chances to do something.
I don't think anybody's arguing that. You're absolutely right. The fact that they did not score in the second half is why they lost the football game. I also can't believe Dabo, instead of just trying to move his offense another inch on that 4th down play that he ended up kicking a field goal on, decided to kick a field goal. I couldn't believe that. That kept Syracuse in the game. Dabo had a chance to just ice the game right there if he just nudged the ball across the line. I couldn't believe he let them. He gave them a chance, and they blew it, of course. And honestly, that
maybe
last
that was
drive
the exchange.
Classic.
Maybe that was the exchange. Dabo will kick if Dino lets 30 seconds run off the clock.
Maybe. Yeah, that was ridiculous. We haven't even talked about how Dino just clock management again. Once again, he just can't do it. And I mean, everybody on Twitter screaming at him. So it always makes me think, like, the first thing that I always think, which is probably I'm in the minority, is like, does he know something we don't? And then my instant second reaction is, no, he doesn't. He's just, I don't know what he's doing.
You put your hands in the shape of a T and you call timeout. That is what you do. And people hate that I consistently say that Dino is still a bad coach. People despise that I've had that take all season. I gave him the nod. He brought in 2 outstanding coordinators. He's still a bad coach. And this has reiterated that conversation. He can't clock manage. That's his only job, is to clock manage.
He might be the worst clock management coach in the country.
And he botches every time. You need him to do something revolving around clock management. What book are you reading that says let 25 seconds run off the clock and then call a timeout? I tweeted it. Apparently, Syracuse only practices the 1 and 38 second drill, not the 2-minute drill. And that's why Dino needed to let some clock run. Like, what other reason are you sitting there? And at that point, you've let 25 seconds run off the clock, let 10 more seconds run, and have a timeout. Like,
honestly, it harkens back to last year's Clemson game where he had arguably the worst clock management of his whole career, where they were driving 17-14 game, not too different than what was happening in this last game. And that one, he botched again. He took a timeout with 40 seconds left instead of letting the clock run down, and then instead of going for it on 4th, kicked a field goal and missed.
That's the thing, right? You're in these tweener situations where you have to pick one or the other. And he finds a way to make it the worst combo. Just pick one. Call a timeout or don't call a timeout. But don't let 25 seconds run off the clock and then call a timeout. That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable, and I want accountability. And I hate that there's no questions being asked to Dino in a post-game press conference, and I hate that Dino does not answer questions in a post-game press conference. It is infuriating to watch the difference. And I know that, yes, this is Clemson, and there's way more eyes on Clemson. Clemson's pregame press conference was 2 parts on YouTube. 40 minutes of content from Dabo in which he's answering questions, providing content. Dino is running a censored organization. You don't get answers. You don't get information. Anytime you ask him a question that would provide an answer, he says, "Oh, that's internal." Or, "Oh, here's an analogy. Here's an analogy."
What did he say
frustrating.
in the game or in this one? Somebody asked him.
Someone asked him what his conversation was with the team, and he said that was an
Oh, he said
internal
that was
conversation.
internal.
Come on.
Come on, man.
Come
Give
on.
him something.
Give an answer.
We got to take another break. But when we come back, I want to talk about the only thing that was good in this game for Syracuse, and that was the defense. But before we do that, I've got to talk to you about SweatBlock.
I'm sweating.
Owen, are you sweating profusely right now to the point that it's embarrassing?
Yeah, I mean, my shirt is being swept through. My hoodie, I'm holding on to right now.
Would you say that if somebody that you were trying to impress came through the door right now, you would blow your first impression because you're so sweaty?
I would just keep my arms down, but if I raised my arms, maybe I would blow it. Yes.
Well, then maybe you should try SweatBlock. It was created by a doctor to help with his own excessive sweating. It is doctor created and doctor recommended. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try SweatBlock. Save 20% with promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon. Okay. We're back. I'm trying to take it down a notch. Just,
I'm not.
kumbaya, meditate for a
I'm
second.
fired up.
In out. And now it's time to talk about this defense. The defense in this game was fantastic. How many games? I'm genuinely curious if anybody can shoot us the stat, or maybe I'll try to find it after the pod, on how many teams have lost games in which they have forced 4 turnovers.
I believe
Syracuse
the
was
stat
insane.
was that teams forcing or that were +4, and so Schrader's interception might have torched this. But teams that were +4 in turnovers were 17-0 so far this season.
Okay.
How about that?
That's bad. Yeah. Jahad Carter was fantastic. Marlo Wax was really solid. Deuce Chestnut was great. Rob Hanna was great. They actually credited Rob Hanna with that forced fumble, so maybe I was wrong about Deuce there. I could have sworn it was Deuce.
It could have gone to a few people.
Okay. Well, they gave it to Rob. Good for you, Rob Hanna.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they were great. Syracuse was great. Steve Linton had a sack. Kevin Jobity had a sack. Is it Jobity or Jobity?
I thought it was Jobity, but I could be wrong.
Lost my headphones, so you got to filibuster.
I thought it was Jobity. I'm going to throw this out there because this is why when we go to this and we're talking about 4 turnovers, you have 4 turnovers in which you scored 7 points off of, and that was because 1 was a scoop and score. The other 3 turnovers, you went punt, punt, punt. That's unacceptable. You got to execute. You got to take advantage.
Okay, I'm back.
The defense in this game, they did their job. And yes, there were a couple of mistakes by Clemson, but it was because of how the defense was playing. The defense forced DJ to make tough throws. They forced him out of the pocket a little bit. They forced a little pressure on him. And the defense, I would say, I'm still pleased with at this point in time. I will say this.
Yeah, you got to be.
Yeah, how can you not? I will say this. If, and I know this is a big if, but if Syracuse does not force 4 turnovers in this game, they would have lost by 40 points. That is the reason that this game was close.
But they did.
They did. I was just saying Clemson drove, and Syracuse made big plays. That is why this game was what it was, and that is why I'm impressed with this defense, because they could have folded. And if they didn't make these big plays, this game would have been out of hand. But every single time they stepped it up, and they did something big, and they kept Syracuse alive. That was really cool to see. And they battled injury after injury after injury. It was absurd. At every play, it seemed like a Syracuse defensive player was down, and Syracuse just kept fighting and kept getting that big play. And yes, Clemson drove again. They drove again. They drove again, and Syracuse would make a big play. It was inspiring to watch what they were doing defensively and to see, hey, yes, you just drove 50 yards on us effortlessly, but bang, here's a big time play. Here's a forced fumble. Here's an interception. They did it time and time again. I kept tweeting it thinking this has to be the time that it doesn't work. But it was just like, hey, Syracuse defense, how about another turnover? Is it too much to ask for another turnover? And they kept doing it. It was awesome. Yes, down the stretch, couple of penalties on the same drive, the late hit, the personal foul, a little bit stupid out of Marlowe, to put the hands on the face after the play. But this defense showed me that they are still legit and can continue to be legit.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Despite name after name after name being on the sideline or being downed, or for a few plays, for a game, for a season, the Syracuse defense has consistently embodied next man up, and it has been very cool.
I saw a good tweet, a couple good tweets where people said this game was going to tell us if Syracuse is a good team. Yeah. And it did tell us, it gave us that answer. Syracuse is a good team, is a really good team. One that's better than anybody thought going into the season. You could not find me one person that genuinely believed Syracuse would be this good. You can't. I don't believe you if you say you did. It's not true. There's nobody that thought Syracuse was going to be this good.
And it's a nod to how good they are that we are this frustrated right now.
Yeah. I also just want to say I think this is a good week for mailbag, just because I feel like there's a lot of emotions going on right now. So I just want to throw out the email. Please, if you have questions, we'll probably do a mailbag episode this week. Email us, losyracuse44@gmail.com. We have some questions left over from a couple of other ones, so we'll definitely answer those as well. Or if you don't want to email, shoot it to us at Twitter, at @LO_Syracuse, or just pop them in the YouTube comment section, and we'll answer those.
Yeah.
But thank you, guys. We are doing really well on social media and whatnot, and viewer retention, so we really appreciate that. We've really been enjoying doing this, so I'm glad, and Owen's glad that you guys are enjoying it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, hey, we are, what are we? How many subs away on YouTube?
We are
less than 150.
39 subs away. I mean, 139. Sorry.
Yeah, we're on pace. All right. There's 2 home games left. I don't know if we're going to do it for Notre Dame, but I want to buy tickets for NC State. Not NC State. I already bought those tickets for myself.
Yeah, you did.
I want to buy tickets
for
Florida State in the Dome, because I do think it's that worthy. And I don't want to push this into basketball season and buy irrelevant non-conference tickets. Okay? Let's knock this out for football season. Get to 1K on YouTube, because I want to buy a 4-pack, maybe 5-pack. I'll hear it for Florida State.
If there's a case.
If there's a case, it'll be a 5-pack. My closing thought, going to give you one for the road. Shout out Jahad Carter. That was cool. Good for you. But Syracuse needs to come back into this game against NC State, or against Notre Dame. Now I'm all over the place with my team names, and I keep defaulting to NC State. But Syracuse needs to come into this game against Notre Dame with revenge on its mind. And not revenge against Notre Dame, but revenge of we're still there. We're still that good. We can do what we need to do. Because this game right here, if you fall to Notre Dame, and I understand Notre Dame opened up as 2-point favorites, but if you fall in back-to-back weeks against Notre Dame, you've stifled momentum completely. You've got to bounce back. You've got to come out against Notre Dame, and that is a nod as well to the fans. I know we're frustrated. I know it was a frustrating loss, but this got a ton of retention on Twitter because it is that valuable of a point. You cannot walk away from this team right now. Stay with them. Pack the Dome against Notre Dame. And ride with them for the rest of the season, because the Orange Bowl is not out of the question, and a double-digit win season is by no means out of the question either. Stick with them. Stick it out. You can be frustrated. You more than have the right to be frustrated, but you got to ride it out for the rest of the year, because this is a team that's still overperforming and is still on track to have one of the best seasons of the last decade, if not the best season of the last decade for the Syracuse Orange.
Well, that does it for Matt Bonaparte and Owen Valentine today. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. I'm Matt Bonaparte. He's Owen Valentine. We'll see you tomorrow.